What appeared between his legs made the alien nurse scream. She had never seen anything like it. Snow howled furiously against the reinforced windows of the military rehab clinic in Juneau, Alaska. Winter here felt eternal, but the budget cuts at McKinley Base weren't, which was why the hospital had started an experimental program few believed would actually happen. Alien nurses from allied species would be assigned to human hospitals as part of an interplanetary emergency medical aid treaty. And that's how Lieutenant Adam Cole, 29, former infantry scout and veteran of the Ganymede orbital offensive, found himself lying on a cot with hip pain and the unsettling feeling that something very strange was about to happen. He heard the footsteps before he saw her. Light, rhythmic, but metallic. When the automatic door slid open, Adam raised his eyebrows. The creature, or rather, the nurse, who stepped into the room looked like she belonged in a sci-fi movie. Her skin was a soft, glowing green, like moss under moonlight. Her hair was a cascade of dark blue strands, braided with tiny metallic rings that jingled softly as she moved. Her eyes were far too large for a human face, deep amber, with no visible pupils. And on her forehead, 3 thin silver lines pulsed like living circuits. Lieutenant Cole. Her voice was clear, almost melodic. Present, I think, he replied, with a confused half-smile. She walked over to the monitor, tapped the screen with her long fingers, and typed effortlessly. A faint scent of ozone and unfamiliar flowers lingered in the air. I'm Lyrie, from the Varellia Prime Medical Delegation. I'll be overseeing your bone regeneration process. The iliac fracture has been partially stabilized, but we need to ensure the nanocytes aren't encountering hormonal interference. She paused, scanning the chart. Which appears to be happening. Adam tried to follow along, but his brain was only catching fragments. Blue hair, green skin, lips too pink, and the way she leaned over. Sorry, interference with what? She moved closer to the bed. Way closer. Hormonal interference. In some humans, the nanocytes react to adrenaline or sudden increases in physical stimulation. Ah, he cleared his throat, looking away. Right. She crouched beside him, picked up a small scanner, and slid the device toward his hip beneath the hospital sheet. The scanner glowed orange. Dopamine levels elevated, heart rate at 113, temperature rising. Cortisol also high. Her brow furrowed, and then she gently pulled back the sheet to scan directly over the skin of his lower abdomen. It was quick. It was clinical, but the motion revealed something she clearly hadn't expected. Her amber eyes went wide. Her hand trembled. The scanner dropped to the floor with a sharp clack. A sound escaped her throat. A light, high-pitched, utterly shocked yelp. What is that? Adam turned red like an emergency beacon. What? You've never seen a... And not at that magnitude, or that position. Is it functional? Very, he replied, trying to suppress an awkward laugh. Fully functional. And sensitive. She stepped back, breathing fast, eyes still locked on the now much more prominent bulge under the sheet. In Varellia, the males of my species don't have that kind of structure. We reproduce via dorsal spiral gene catalysis. That's an organ. Adam dropped his head back on the pillow, somewhere between disbelief and embarrassment. Nurse, didn't you take a class on human anatomy? We did, but just projections. Neutral holograms. No one mentioned that level of spontaneous physical expansion during clinical exams. She looked at him, now with an expression that was curious. The silence turned really awkward. She bent down, picked up the scanner, and then spoke firmly. We need to drain the nanocytes from the area immediately. The system interpreted the stimulus as localized trauma and rerouted regeneration resources to the cavernous tissue. So, my body thinks it's under attack. Exactly. Well, it depends how you look at it, Adam muttered. She tapped a panel beside the bed and activated a muscular containment field, gently locking his hips in place. Don't move. This might feel strange. He barely had time to react. Her fingers slid along the nerve points near his groin, activating sensors with surgical precision. Every touch triggered involuntary responses in his body, not from pain. Far from it. Nurse, is this part of the treatment? I'm simply redirecting electrical impulses. Nothing you won't survive. Right. But, Lyra, yes. Next time you scream because of that, a little warning would be nice. She looked at him, her amber eyes now glowing faintly, and let out a small smile. Her first. I'll do my best. It had been 2 days since the most embarrassing medical incident of Adam Cole's life. The event had been officially logged in his file under a bureaucratic euphemism. Spontaneous biophysiological response triggered by unanticipated alien external stimulus. And, thanks to the gods or central command, no one besides him and Lyra knew what had really happened. But what bothered Adam wasn't just what happened. It was the way Lyra had looked at him ever since. There was no disgust, no judgment, not even indifference. What he saw was worse. Genuine scientific curiosity, as if he were part patient, part biological puzzle, part living experiment. On the morning of day 2, the door slid open with its usual soft hiss. Adam was expecting her, but his body still tensed the moment she walked in, wearing the crisp, white medical uniform with silver accents. It contrasted sharply with her light green skin and golden eyes. "Good morning, Lieutenant Cole." "Morning, Nurse Lyra." She approached without hesitation, carrying a new scanner with long wires and a metal capsule attached. He didn't like the look of it. "Today we'll run a pelvic muscle response test, an induced dopamine control assessment. The base wants to understand why your nanocytes prioritize the lower region even after bone stabilization." Adam raised an eyebrow. "You mean, why my hip got ignored and a different part went way too active?" "Correct." She said it with zero trace of malice, which somehow made it worse. He coughed awkwardly. "You sure this is necessary? Would you prefer to have involuntary episodes during future combat missions? Because right now, your system thinks an erection is a form of muscular injury." Adam groaned and flopped back on the bed, defeated. "All right, let's get this over with, you mad scientist." She connected the wires to her console and, with a few quick taps, activated sensory biofeedback mode. A blue light shimmered around the bed. A low, humming vibration ran through Adam's body, and instinctively, he clenched his fists. "Relax," she said, her voice softer now. "I need you calm. Otherwise the data will be skewed by adrenaline." Try telling that to a guy with wires all over his crotch and a hot alien poking at his hip. She paused. Her eyes met his slowly. "Huh?" she asked. Adam froze. Too late to take it back. "I mean, it's an expression. Like, pretty, not feline. You don't have fur or pointy ears, or oh god." She tilted her head slightly, like she was processing a foreign language. Then, finally she smiled again. "In Varelia, beauty isn't defined by symmetry or form. It's measured by how intensely a being affects the surrounding bioelectric field, and you cause considerable instability." Adam wasn't sure if that was a compliment or a warning. But before he could ask, Lyra's console let out a sharp alert. Muscle response activated. Energy spike detected. "Already?" he asked, alarmed. She bent down to check the source of the spike. Of course, the pelvic region. Same place. Same damn involuntary reaction. She didn't scream this time, but her fingers paused halfway there. Her eyes lingered on him a few seconds longer than necessary, and something different crossed her expression. "Your body is starting to associate my presence with this type of stimulus," she said, almost in a whisper. "It's not like I can control it. You're unlike anything I've ever seen. And you're unsettling. Chaotic, but not repulsive. Just unpredictable." She stepped closer. Adam could smell the electrical field around her, something between plasma and lotus blossom. Her eyes flashed a little brighter for a moment. She seemed to lean in slightly, as if searching for something. But suddenly, the door slid open with force. A human walked in. Dr. Mathers, supervisor of the Alien Integration Protocol. "Ah, Lyra, there you are. The joint neural evaluation starts in 10 minutes. Bring the reports on patient Cole." She straightened immediately, shutting down the sensors. Adam held his breath, sensing that something had just been interrupted. Something he didn't understand, but wanted to. "Yes, doctor. I'll be there," she replied, voice still low. As the doctor left, she turned back to Adam and said something he didn't expect. "When you're done here, come to the hydrothermal recovery sector. I have an alternative method that might help with your biophysical control." "You're going to examine me again?" She hesitated. Her amber eyes locked onto his. "No, but I want to show you something. Something that might help both of us." And before he could ask more, she was gone, leaving the air thick with unspoken questions and unchecked impulses. The hydrothermal recovery sector looked like something out of a futuristic dream. Curved walls of pearlescent white, floors warmed by geothermal heat, soft steam rising from individual pools. The space had been designed for sensory fusion therapy, a mix of hot baths, neural stimulation, and absolute silence. But Adam couldn't focus on any of that, because in the center of the room, her back to him, adjusting the temperature of one of the pools, stood Lyra, wearing nothing but a sheer, translucent fabric draped over her shoulders. The steam made her silhouette appear even more otherworldly, her green skin softly glowing under the amber ceiling lights. She turned at the sound of his footsteps. She didn't cover herself. She didn't apologize. She simply said, "You came. You wanted me to see this?" Adam asked, trying to keep his eyes on her face. She made a gentle motion, beckoning him closer. "Our protocol allows supervised contact in hydrothermal zones, as long as there's mutual consent. Besides, your body needs rebalancing. And maybe so does mine." He stopped 2 steps away from her, swallowing hard. "Yours too. After our last exam, my pulse stayed elevated for 3 hours." She studied him like someone watching a storm about to break. "You affect me, Adam Cole. Not pathologically, but biologically. Intensely." He took a deep breath. Heat spread across his skin, tension building. But it wasn't just desire. It was the feeling of crossing a line, invisible, maybe forbidden, something there might be no coming back from. "Are you sure about this?" he asked, more serious now. "I'm human. I have instincts, reactions that might be more aggressive or primal than you expect." She stepped closer, her bare feet gliding across the warm floor. The silver markings on her forehead began to glow brighter, and in a voice that seemed to tremble for the first time, she said, "Maybe that's exactly why I want it." She extended her hand. Adam hesitated, then took it. The touch was warm, surprisingly human. A faint electric pulse traveled up his arm. Not painful, but intimate. They looked at each other in silence. And then, she led him into the water. The water was warm and enveloping, filled with tiny shimmering particles that reacted to every movement. They sat facing each other, submerged up to their shoulders. Steam surrounded them like a veil. "What exactly do you want to show me?" he asked, trying to keep his composure. She reached out again, but this time, gently touched the lower part of his abdomen, right over the surgical scar. "This is the center of the imbalance," she said. "It's not just physical, it's emotional. Your body is crying out for contact, for acceptance, for something no one on this planet has given you since the trauma." Adam lightly held her wrist. His eyes were different now, less guarded, more vulnerable. "And what about you?" he asked. "What does your body want?" She hesitated. The skin on her arms darkened slightly, a biological blush, unique to her species. "My people don't practice touch the way yours do. But ever since I arrived, since the day you reacted to me like that, something changed. I've started dreaming about sensations. Heat, weight, shared breath." She pressed her forehead to his. "I want to feel the way you feel." Adam didn't resist. His hand slowly traced her face, down her chin. And then, in a gesture that defied every regulation of the base, the Alliance, and interplanetary medicine, he kissed her. At first, she froze. But she didn't pull away. The silver circuits in her skin lit up brightly, as if her body was processing, interpreting, accepting. And then she kissed him back. Not perfectly, but fully. The kiss only broke when they needed to breathe. Both were breathless. Adam rested his forehead against hers again and whispered, "This is insane. Or maybe it's just inevitable." But then, a sharp alarm blared through the room. Red lights began to flash. The system had detected a critical shift in one of the patient's biosignals. Lyra AE. Adam stood up in shock. "What's happening?" She clutched her chest, her eyes trembling. "My body, it's trying to merge our genetic data. It's a defense response. Instinctual." "What?" "I need to get out of the water." Before, but she couldn't finish. She collapsed right there in his arms, her skin glowing like an overloaded light source, her body flickering between physical and energetic states. Adam shouted for help. He slammed the emergency button, but as she struggled to breathe in his arms, the only thought in his mind was, I did this. My touch, my kiss almost killed her. Biological quarantine lockdown was triggered at 3:17. Lyra was unconscious, floating inside a suspended regeneration chamber, surrounded by sensors and alien fluids, monitored by 8 human specialists and 2 Alliance security officers. Adam, meanwhile, was being interrogated in a cold room, all steel walls and cameras in every corner. Dr. Mathers, paler than usual, stared at him like he was a bomb about to go off. Let me get this straight, Lieutenant, Mathers said, pushing the printed report to the center of the table. You kissed the alien nurse during a muscular recovery protocol in a United States military facility. It was consensual. She invited me there, and she initiated contact. It doesn't matter who started it. Do you even realize what you triggered? Her body activated a defensive genetic fusion process, a reaction that usually only occurs during extreme mating conditions or species-level extinction risk. Adam clenched his fists. She said she wanted to feel what we feel. I didn't force anything. Mathers stood up violently. And now she's in critical condition. Your chemistry spiked her hormonal levels to the point of neurosensory overload. You're killing her, Cole, with a touch, with a kiss, with every damn heartbeat. The silence that followed felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. But then a secondary door opened, and a gray-haired woman in a United Earth Space Force uniform walked in. General Petra Hollings. When she spoke, even the air held its breath. Leave us, Mathers. The doctor hesitated but obeyed. The door closed behind him. She sat across from Adam, arms crossed. Soldier, you are a diplomatic disaster waiting to happen. But you're also the only living variable that stopped Lyra from going into total collapse. Adam looked up. What do you mean? The fusion didn't complete because you stopped it in time. Her system went into overload. Yes, but your presence kept her vitals just barely stable. That means your body is partially in sync with hers. He swallowed hard. So she's gonna live. Maybe. If you agree to maintain contact. Adam frowned. You want me to stay with her? This isn't about romance, kid. It's about survival. She needs you to stabilize her neural regeneration cycle. Your touch, your presence, your human biokinetic frequencies. If you refuse, she could enter irreversible collapse, or become something unrecognizable. He closed his eyes, feeling the weight of it all pressed down on him. But when he opened them, his voice was steady. Take me to her. Minutes later, he was led into the central chamber. The tube where Lyra floated glowed softly, the silver lines on her skin pulsing in uneven rhythm. The respirator mask covered her delicate face, but her eyes were half open, and when he entered, she saw him. The monitor showed a slight stabilization in her vitals. Adam stepped closer. The technicians activated emergency contact mode. A translucent field opened, exposing her chest so he could place his hand directly on her skin. The moment he touched her, he felt it, a warm, intense current, like her body was calling for his. And then, in a hoarse whisper, she said, "You came back." "I never should have left," he replied. The sensors responded immediately. The lights began to realign. The flickering energy across her skin started to stabilize. And then she said something that froze everyone listening, even through the sealed observation glass. "Adam, you're my origin point now. I've changed. I can't go back." He swallowed hard, his hand still resting on her chest. The heat was real, the bond, visceral. Then let me change with you. If you've ever rooted for an impossible love, subscribe, because this channel has so many more stories like this, full of emotion, madness, and connections that span entire galaxies. The image of Lyra emerging from the regeneration chamber supported by Adam spread across every screen at McKinley Base in under an hour. Someone in the monitoring sector leaked the footage, and soon after, it was everywhere. News outlets, interplanetary networks, diplomatic panels. Human soldier fuses biology with alien nurse. Sexual incident or evolutionary leap. Forbidden contact. Earth forces caught in interspecies genetic scandal. Varelians react in shock to spontaneous fusion between medic and human soldier. Adam barely had time to breathe. 2 guards followed his every step. His access was restricted. He now slept in an isolated wing, constantly monitored by biologists, doctors, and psychologists. But the hardest part wasn't the isolation. It was not being allowed to see Lyra freely. "She's under emotional observation," said General Hollings during one of his behavioral evaluations. "The incomplete fusion is altering her sensory systems. Signs of attachment, territorial confusion, involuntary, bonding impulses. That's a fancy way of saying she misses me," Adam replied flatly. "Yes, and her body is literally getting sick without you. But the same could happen to you, if the bond deepens. Have you thought about that?" He didn't answer, but he thought about it. Every night, he thought about it when his dreams came full of sensory fragments. The warmth of her skin, the sweet ozone scent, the way her amber eyes searched for his even in pain. And then came the meeting of the High Council on Interspecies Relations. Gathered at the orbital base Denver Station 5, a circular table brought together representatives from all 10 allied species, including the Varelians. A holographic replay of the incident was shown. The kiss, the collapse, the revival, the incomplete fusion. And at the center of it all, Adam Cole. "This human triggered a pre-reproductive cycle without authorization," said the representative of Trall-Sec, an amphibian with compound eyes. "This violates the Alpha Tertius Genetic Convention." He saved her life, countered human physician Dr. Amani Lee. And more than that, he initiated the first deep emotional contact between our species. "This isn't a violation. It's progress. Or the beginning of a cultural virus," the Varelian diplomat replied, his voice metallic and cold. "Our nurse is no longer one of us. Her fusion has been compromised. She now vibrates on Terran frequency. She desires physical contact. She questions hierarchy. She is contaminated." Adam stood up from his chair without asking permission. "With all due respect, ladies and gentlemen, this isn't contamination. It's transformation." The silence hit like a steel wall. I didn't invade her mind. I didn't control her body. We both said yes. And in that yes, we discovered maybe our boundaries aren't as sacred as we believed. If that's wrong, maybe it's the rules that are broken, not us. Some representatives exchanged glances. Others just took notes. But the Varelians remained as hard as stone. "She must be returned," they said, "for reconditioning, isolation, and, if necessary, genetic reset." The word reset made Adam's stomach turn. "That's going to erase who she is now." "It will erase what you did to her," the Varelian replied, as if that were a comfort. But before a final decision could be sealed, the transmission was hijacked. The image trembled. A burst of light cut through the holographic chamber. And then, she appeared. Lyra, not lying down, not weak, but standing, wearing a fitted gray adaptation suit, the silver marks on her skin still pulsing in a hybrid rhythm. Her eyes were darker now, more human. "You're not deciding my fate without hearing from me." Silence fell instantly. "I am Lyra of Aurelia Prime, nurse, scientist, and now something new, something none of you understand. But I do, and I want to say, with every cell in my body, I chose him." She turned to face the council. "If you want to call me contaminated, then do it. But know this, my system no longer wants to go back. My body adapted, and so did my heart." She looked at Adam. "And if you try to erase me, he comes with me." The world would never be the same. The line between human and alien had been crossed, and there was no going back. After Lyra's public transmission at the council, nothing stayed discreet anymore. She was removed from the base and relocated, under minimal surveillance, to an experimental containment center in the Nevada desert, where she could continue living away from the political pressures of the allied species. Adam, now labeled a biological trigger bond, was assigned to the same facility in a separate module, but only a few meters away. By order of the Interplanetary Council, physical contact between them was strictly forbidden, but touch was no longer the only bond they shared. "I hear you," Lyra whispered one night, pressed against the metallic wall of a room. "Even when you don't speak, even when you're sleeping." On the other side, Adam sat with his back against his wall too. "I feel it when you're anxious, when you feel alone. Sometimes it's like my heart rate syncs with yours." Because it does. Through the vent between them, she let out a soft laugh. It was her first laugh since the separation. For days, their connection became more sensory, verbal, neural. Dr. Amani conducted an experimental test. Lyra received distorted sound impulses, and even without hearing the exact words, Adam reproduced them with 80% accuracy. The two were developing a primitive biocommunicative channel, as if their bodies were inventing a new language, made of rhythm, intuition, pulse. And then came the offer. "There's a place where you two could live," said General Hollings in a private meeting. "Remote. Not under any current treaty jurisdiction. Officially, it's a climate monitoring zone in Alaska. Unofficially, it's no one's land. Not the Council's. Not Varelius. Not ours." Adam looked up. "And we could. Live how you want. Together. But there's one condition. You can never come back." He hesitated. For a second. She already knows. She made her decision hours ago. 2 days later, a black shuttle dropped them in the middle of a snow-covered mountain range, where an old research outpost had been rebuilt and adapted for the hybrid life Lyra now needed to maintain. The place was remote, cold, brutal, but perfect. Because here, no one watched them. No one told them to stop. No one made them pretend they were just soldiers, patients, or scientists. Here, they could simply be themselves. Their first night together was quiet. They cooked something simple, synthetic protein and local root crops. They sat by a custom-built hearth, the warmth of energy stones casting soft shadows across the floor. Lyra removed her containment suit, stood bare beneath the red firelight, green skin glowing softly, the silver markings along her body pulsing stronger now, as if this place, this moment, was awakening a new version of her. "Does it still scare you?" she asked, touching the line that ran from her collarbone down to her abdomen. Adam shook his head slowly. "It never did. I just was dumb enough to think maybe it was all a dream." She stepped closer, slowly, kneeled in front of him, and for the first time since everything they'd been through, there was no fear in her eyes. "Then dream with me, but wide awake." He pulled her to him, not like a patient, not like a soldier, but like a man, like an equal, like someone who, despite everything, chose to love what he didn't fully understand, but deeply felt. Their kiss was calm now, intentional, no alarms, no collapse. The fusion wasn't forced anymore. It was mutual desire, skin against skin, heartbeat to heartbeat, a dance between two rhythms, searching for harmony in the chaos. And they found it. When she moaned for the first time, low, trembling, completely nonverbal, the whole station seemed to breathe with them, as if the world itself whispered, "Yes, this too is life." Later, wrapped in thermal furs and surrounded by silence, she whispered, "I've never felt this alive." Adam held her close, feeling her warmth melt into his. "I've never felt this whole." And they slept like that. No promises, no guarantees, just two bodies bound, not by war or science or chance, but by something infinitely stronger. Choice. It was night when the sky exploded in blue. Adam woke up first. The shockwave rocked the station walls, metal panels vibrating with unnatural force. Within seconds, he was up, weapon in hand, base sensors flashing red. "Lyra," he shouted, already sprinting to the thermal chamber where she slept. He found her standing, completely nude, her body lit from within by a glow that didn't come from the station, but from her. "What's happening to you?" She was breathing hard, amber eyes now burning like molten gold. "They found me. Outside, a ship was landing among the pine trees, silent, unmarked. It wasn't human. It wasn't Alliance. It was Varelian, but not an official model. This was an Exile-class vessel, its hull weathered, its insignia hidden beneath worn paint, the split circle of the rebel casts. Adam activated the station's protective field, but before he could initiate evacuation protocols, the ground shook. Lyra dropped to her knees, her skin pulsing in violent, erratic bursts of light. "They've triggered a remote restoration code," she gasped. "They're trying to reset me. That'll kill you. Or erase me." He ran to her, trying to hold her, but a surge of energy slammed him into the wall. Even injured, he dragged himself back. "Lyra, listen to me. If you're gonna die, it'll be with me. If you're gonna fight, same thing." She trembled, clawed fingers clutching her chest. "They want you to choose. Be theirs or be nothing." Adam grabbed her hand and pressed it to his own chest. Then choose to be ours. Not theirs. Not mine. Yours. For a second, everything stopped. Her eyes flickered. And then, she screamed. But it wasn't pain. It was breaking free. From the depths of her throat came a sound that wasn't just vocal. It was vibrational. Every light in the station burst at once. Outside, the snow began to melt in perfect rings, as if time itself was collapsing. The rebel ship halted. Its systems shut down completely. And above them, a glowing aurora unfolded across the sky, answering the raw, living pulse she had released. When Adam held her, she collapsed into his arms, still alive, but changed. Her skin now held a third hue, somewhere between green and gray. The silver markings had spiraled, and something new had awakened in her eyes. Not just consciousness, but absolute free will. She breathed in, leaning on him, and spoke with a calmness he had never heard from her before. I burned their code out of me. You're free. No, we are. The next morning, the world woke up to a new signal from Alaska, a bioluminescent pattern only possible through full fusion, without collapse. They called it the hybrid aurora event. Adam and Lyra didn't run. They didn't hide. They faced the impossible and survived. But the cost was real. The Varelian caste declared them incompatible. The Alliance suspended them indefinitely. They were stripped from all official protocols. And yet, it didn't break them. Because now, they weren't just human or alien. They were a beginning. 3 days after the hybrid aurora event, snow returned. Slow, silent, as if the world were trying to cover in white what it couldn't explain. Inside the station, now their home, Adam tended to the artificial garden they built together. The plants were neither Earth's nor Varelia's, but hybrids. Terran stems, Varelian iridescent leaves, growing in soil tainted by emotional radiation and biogenic hope. Never thought I'd have a garden, he said, adjusting the roots of a biostimulated orchid, let alone with an alien who almost killed me with a scream. That wasn't a scream, Lyra replied, lounging in a chair made of heated stone and kinetic fabric. That was an energetic birth. But, I'll admit, maybe I overdid the volume. She laughed. A new laugh. Freer. More human. More her. Since the event, she had been adapting. Her body had accepted the fusion. The biological changes had stabilized. But what stood out most couldn't be measured by any scanner. She was different. Not a product of two species, but a being with her own identity. And it came with pain. The Varelians haven't responded, she said. Not even the rebels. To them, I'm a glitch. A system failure. To me, Adam replied, handing her a mug of warm, sweet root tea. You're the system that finally makes sense. And you? Don't you miss being with your own kind? He paused, thinking. I've been a soldier, an orphan, a patient, a prisoner. But here with you, I think I'm finally just Adam. She smiled, leaned in, touched his face gently. And I'm just Lyra, not property of caste, not a servant of protocol, not a tool in a diplomacy that was never mine to begin with. They leaned back against the same seat, wrapped in thermal blankets, staring out at the frozen forest, now bathed every night in a soft aurora that appeared in the same spot in the sky. It was the trace of her transformation. Scientists called it post-hybrid luminescent residue. But to them, it was simply what was left of love after the war. In the months that followed, the Alaska station became a rumor, passed around by explorers, smugglers, and curious former scientists. They said a forbidden couple lived there, ones who had defied the laws of biological fusion. Some came looking for answers, others for miracles. But everyone who made it there was welcomed with hot tea, shelter, and the same message, carved in stone by Lyra, right at the entrance. Here, the impossible is just a choice you haven't made yet. One night, Adam woke to a soft creak. Lyra wasn't in bed. He stepped outside the cabin, wearing only his thermal coat. Snow fell lightly. And there, in the makeshift sauna beside the station, wrapped in steam and amber light, she was waiting. Naked, her green skin shimmered in the heat, and her eyes met his with tenderness and longing. Her blue hair, once tied in war braids, now fell loose around her shoulders. Her natural crown of horns glowed faintly, like a personal constellation only he could read. It's cold out there, she said. It's unbearably hot in here. She smiled, holding out her hand. Then come freeze with me and burn from the inside out. And that night, between ice and steam, between aurora and silence, they found each other again. No fear, no rush, no planets between them. 1 year passed since the hybrid aurora event. Alaska's seasons remained deadly to the unprepared, but for them, it was the perfect frame for a new life. A deep silence, where only the wind remembered their names. Lyra walked barefoot through the snow. Her soles had adapted. Tiny thermal capillaries, once dormant, now protected her. No boots needed. Her body, that impossible fusion, kept evolving. Adam watched from the station's porch, holding a steaming mug. His hair was longer now. His shoulders bore the scars of a time when touch was forbidden. He still dreamed of their first kiss, but now those dreams came with new scenes. The two of them laughing while doing dishes, sharing a reading hammock, building a moss-lit greenhouse. They weren't a miracle anymore. They were a routine, and that was even more precious. One afternoon, while gathering samples in the frozen woods, they found something strange. A relic left behind by a human explorer's ship. An old communication module, damaged but partly functional. It can be fixed, Lyra said, her eyes lighting up at the familiar panel. If we do, the Alliance will know where we are. Or maybe, the world just needs to know we're still here. Adam hesitated, then nodded. They spent days restoring the circuits. They sent out one single message, encoded, simple words. No threat, no demand. It read, "We are alive, we are well, and we are together. What's between us is not a disease, contamination, or deviation. It's just love. If that's still allowed, write back. If not, just know, it happened anyway." 2 weeks later, the reply came. Short, but enough. Message received. No directive will be issued. Keep going. Keep watching. Keep loving. Signed, Imani Lee. Adam laughed when he read it. So, is that a blessing, or are we officially being ignored? Lyra looked at him, serious. It means the world bows when love is quiet, but relentless. The nights that followed were soft. They built a dome of ice around the sauna, which had become their sanctuary. The fusion, once involuntary, was now ritual, always preceded by words, always sealed with laughter. One evening, after a dip in the water, she said, "Did you know my people used to see humans as creatures of excess? Too much touch, too much noise, too much instinct. But now, I realize you're that way because you carry your emotions through your whole body. And your people, we try to bury them, but the soul can't hold that much. You taught me to let flowers grow." He kissed her gently. "You taught me to wait for them to grow, even in winter." One morning, they woke to footsteps in the snow. A group of young people was crossing the forest. Humans, explorers, scientists, or maybe just seekers of something they didn't yet know how to name. Lyra stepped outside first, head high, her skin glowing beneath the polar sky. Adam followed, upright, with calm eyes and an honest smile. The visitors froze, unsure whether to run or kneel. But she raised one hand, greeting them with a gesture that was human in shape, but carried the rhythm of a Varelian salute. A new gesture. "Welcome," she said. They camped nearby, listened to stories, collected hybrid seeds, and they left with eyes full of quiet wonder. Months later, a new generation of hybrids began to emerge, not biologically, but philosophically. People who no longer wanted to live by the rules of total separation. People who believed that two worlds could collide and not destroy each other, but create a third. The name of this movement? Project Aurora. Adam wrote a letter, his handwriting slightly trembling. She was green. I was flesh. She came from the sky. I from the ground. And between us, silence. But when she smiled, the universe made sense. Because it was never about understanding. It was about choosing. And I chose. Lyra, reading it, cried for the second time in her life. The first was when she almost lost herself. The second, when she realized she'd never again be just a nurse or an exile. Now, she was part of a story that had never been told before, because no one had dared to live it. 5 years later, the world had changed. Not by wars, not by decrees, but by seeds planted in silence. The station in Alaska became a historic landmark, a a sacred place for those who believed love could, indeed, be a form of revolution. Lyra and Adam never left, not because they were forbidden, but because they no longer needed to run. On the morning of the 5th anniversary of the Aurora event, the sky dawned brighter than usual. A layer of blue mist hovered above the mountains, like the air itself was singing a welcome. Lyra stepped outside first, wrapped in a white and gray cloak woven from polymoss fibers. Her horns were adorned with ribbons of liquid light, gifts from a young visitor from Varelia 2 years before. Adam followed, walking calmly. He wore a handcrafted coat sewn by both human and alien hands, bearing the symbol of aurora, 2 circles touching, forming a third in the center. They had become the invisible leaders of a quiet movement. People from everywhere sent letters, requests, questions. How do you connect the impossible? How do you love someone from another world? How do you survive the fear of not belonging? Adam always gave the same answer. You don't survive. You transform. Inside the central greenhouse, a new kind of flower had bloomed that morning. It was small, with translucent petals that reacted to touch. When Lyra brushed her fingers across it, the flower glowed with a soft golden hue. It responds to emotional presence, she said, amazed. It's like it senses when someone is whole inside. Adam knelt beside her. Then it's exactly like you. She smiled, a calm, mature smile, different from the one she wore the first night they met, but carrying the same spark. They didn't have children, yet, but they had created new life in other ways. Plants, words, hybrid communities beginning to rise in neutral zones around the planet. Small aurora stations scattered across remote areas, all inspired by them. In the old sauna, now called the Temple of First Choices, many left vows, names, symbolic items. Adam and Lyra still visited at night, not out of nostalgia, but to remember that they were the ones who chose. Not science, not the councils, not chance, them. And every time they returned to that warm space in the middle of the forest's brutal cold, the moment played out the same way. Her skin pulsing in the steam, his body answering with heat. The meeting, the fusion, the silence, and the same whisper, year after year. You're still my point of origin, and you my final destination. If this story moved you, if you believe true love doesn't need to understand everything to be real, hit subscribe, share it with someone who believes in the impossible, and drop this in the comments. Even on another world, I'd still choose love.